Good evening, folks. Welcome to the studio again this evening. Sorry if people have joined a bit earlier and saw the end screen wondering what was going on. I was streaming earlier this afternoon and completely forgot to stop the stream. So it's just been broadcasting the end titles for the last couple of hours. So sorry about that, folks. Right, so sorry, I just caught myself where I had surgery and it hurt a little bit. So I'm going to continue doing the sky and we'll see if we finish it this stream or not. So welcome anybody that's currently watching. Thank you for checking out the studio. If you have joined expecting to see carving, I'm afraid that won't be possible tonight. I had some surgery yesterday which has affected on my stomach area basically, and my stomach muscles won't allow me to do carving this evening. There is when you're carving you use your stomach muscles more than I realised, shall we say, and unfortunately it just hurts too much to carve. So I am continuing with this Punchcraft, and normal service will then be resumed as soon as I can, or as soon as it's comfortable to do so. That may hopefully be tomorrow night, but unfortunately I can't guarantee that. We shall just have to see how it goes. Hey Default Guy, hello again, welcome. Thank you for dropping back into the studio. And the Legend Sadar, hello to you as well, welcome. You can ask a favour, doesn't mean I'll actually be able to grant it, but go ahead, the Legend Sadar, go ahead. Oh, by the way, I like your avatar picture with the big fish. I assume that's from our discussion the other day. Maybe, is it a bass? I couldn't recognise it, to be honest. Water bottle. Now water gets said all sorts of ways, but I normally would pronounce it water bottle. Some people will say water bottle, but I say water. Excuse me. I see you've got one of those credit cards where you can put your own picture on. Yes, that would be good. I bet lots of people must ask about that then on your credit card. Just Jessup, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Sorry I'm not carving this evening, but what sound? Oh, you mean me coughing sort of clipped to the microphone, did it? And sorry about that. Ow. I'm trying my best actually not to cough today. I'm also trying not to do something else, but I'm not going to tell you sadistic people what that is. What? A wattle bottle? Oh, okay. It's sort of a semi-rhyming slang sort of thing. Yorkshire. If we got into the more Yorkshire dialects, you would probably pronounce it as a water bottle, with a hard A rather than as an O. Oh, this yeah. Sometimes it sounds nice. So that if you hear a sharp crack, it means that you're actually like that. It means you're actually breaking threads in the material. In theory, you shouldn't. If the needle's pushing the thread, if the needle's pushing the material apart, then you shouldn't actually hear any sound at all. It should be virtually silent. But there is also a nice sort of crunching sound you get sometimes. I don't know quite what it is, but I enjoy the crunching sound. Even though I kind of strive to get the silent one. Okay. Well, the typical response, of course, is, well, I don't have an accent, and at which point the typical response to that is, so you're not interested in me. Crunch, yeah. It's kind of interesting, I think, how much sound plays in quite a few hobbies and crafts, because I mean, I can tell when this needle is going through, you know, correctly, if you like, or at least smoothly, because of the sound. When I'm carving, I can tell whether I'm cutting the wood or pushing it, and you know, basically there's a sound which helps you determine whether it's right. And even with airbrushing, there's a sound that you get from using the airbrush, whether it's the paint or the air itself that's coming out, but there's a sort of a characteristic sound that you get used to, and when it's missing, you know, then you know something's not right. But you kind of wouldn't realise, you know, that sound plays such an interesting part in a lot of things. I'm now trying to think. There isn't really any sound in pyrography or scraperboard, or rather there is sound, but nothing related to how well it's doing. I know in rotary carving there is a sound as well, because if you bog the bit down, try and work too hard, you can hear the sound of the rotary tools change, you know, as you overwork them. Accents, or rather the way people say things, you know, can be an interesting thing to listen to. Yeah, that's right. It just didn't sound right, and it just wasn't cutting right, and I mean the two were combined there, but just sometimes you can just But buffer wheel. What are you doing, Just Jessup? Yeah, I've never been that good at it, but yes, you can. I suppose I've done a little bit of sea fishing. You can tell by the bounce of the line whether it's a solid bottom or sand. I'm now just looking for a buffer wheel that I've got. Oh, yeah. Well, it's not a buffer wheel. It's a carborundum wheel. That's what happens when you spin a bit at 38,000 RPM by accident. This has, I think it's got something like an 8,000 RPM speed limit, and I accidentally forgot to limit the micromotor when I spun it, and it hit 38,000 RPM. It yanked itself out of the micromotor. The micromotor yanked itself out of my hands, and the whole lot went flying. So be very careful. 80-volt guy, welcome back. And there's no way I'm going to try and straighten that, by the way, in case you think just straighten it out, because you can't get it running true again. Not very easily. So that's kind of... It's now a hand tool more than anything. Yeah, not so much suck as hurt, actually, because when you it's surprising, that thing. I mean, you don't hold micromotors. You don't hold them really tight, but you don't hold them sort of very loosely either. And that thing yanked the whole micromotor out of my hand. And of course, because you're running the micromotor, or the micromotor's running with a foot switch and speed control, it was only the fact that I jumped when it happened and I took my foot off. Otherwise the thing had just carried on spinning for quite some time and would probably have caused quite a bit of damage. So AD4 guys, is there any characteristic sounds with chainmail? And I mean, I noticed there's a click sometimes when you try and get the make the ends of the rings meet each other, or is it basically just a silent craft? And how was the fish and chips? You planted that thought as well, by the way, and I also had fish and chips. And we had to go out in somewhat pouring rain to go and pick them up. Oh, I think this is actually an easier form. Excuse me. I may have to get myself a glass of water. It's actually the opposite. It's less labour intensive than embroidery, because I'd be having to use both hands with embroidery, passing a needle backwards and forwards, and that's quite an intensive activity. This one's a lot easier because it's only single-sided. But you may also not have realised, but this is the back. You're looking at the back here, not the front. I'm guessing, actually, I don't think you've seen this piece before. So just a moment while I just do that, and I'll turn it over and show you the front surface. So this one isn't particularly labour intensive, so this might interest you. That's the front. So what we're creating is lots of little loops. It's a bit like carpet making, but we're creating lots of little loops, and that then forms a carpet-like surface, It can be sculptured and textured as well, so there's areas here where it's the loops are shorter and therefore you get a three-dimensional feel to it. So as you run your hands over, you can feel bumps and things like that. I'm not following the elections particularly. I think they've won, haven't they, Just Jessup? Yes, when you start ordering stuff, it's a bit like going into a sweet shop, isn't it, AD? Well, so some of the stuff I've seen so far. I want one of those, and I want one of those, and I want some of those. And don't know what I'd do with them, but I just want them. Yeah. I'm hoping I've got another bobbin of this light blue thread actually, because I'm going to use this all up before I've got even halfway. And this was a brand new bobbin when I started this blue area. Thank you, the Legend Seda. By the way, where does that name come from anywhere in particular? I've got a feeling I've seen that name Seda in a game, probably one of the Resident Evil games. Excuse me, I'm going to need to get myself a drink of water. I'll be back in just a moment. Andrew Word 2108, welcome, good evening, welcome to the studio. I'll be back in just a moment. Sorry about that, folks. I just needed to get a glass of water, clear my throat. I'd heard one of them had, but not the other. Ah, okay. Sometimes it's there's also, well, in a lot of cases there's all sorts of interesting originations for a lot of the names on the internet that people use. Now when I started doing this I thought I'd have enough thread with with this one bobbin to do the whole of this sky. I was completely wrong. Okay, well, it's a good enough reason to add the legend onto it, that's for certain. And to some extent, that's why I have art on the end of my name. But it was suitable as well, having the art on the end. I kind of wonder now where 80 Fall Guy has picked up the. I know I understand where the 80 bit comes from, but the Fall Guy sounds a bit shady now. Not really, to be honest, because it's kind of like you put enough pressure on it to do that, and it's still, you know, yes, you can if you like, and then push it through, but it's still, I mean, you might have caught it there. It's still catching some of them, but to be honest, it's, as you can see, it's quite a bit more of a lengthy thing to do. And what I have found, this material doesn't really mind. Even, you know, I've pushed this through, and I broke some threads then, and I'll continue to break threads. But what I found is that even if I were to pull this out and do it again and break more threads, I can replace these, redo it over the same area at least 4 or 5 times, because I have done that in the past. Because what sometimes happens, if the thread gets stuck, you're busy punching, but you don't actually see that the thread gets stuck. So what happens is you pull the loop out, and you can go quite a distance. And if you're doing like a little block, for example, you can go quite a distance before you realise what's happening, and then you have to do it again. So again, you're punching through material and breaking some of the weave, and then you know, if you discover, oops, you've done it the wrong colour, and you have to do it again. So I have done it about three or 4 times in the past, and not had a problem. And yet I once took this with me away for a weekend somewhere, and I forgot to take the material. So I actually went into a local dressmaker shop in the place and got what looked like the similar material and tried it, and it basically just didn't work. It fell apart with great big holes in it. So something about the way this is woven withstands threads being broken, and is still a strong piece of material. So I'm not fantastically bothered about trying too hard to avoid the breaking threads. It would just slow things down too much. But what you can do is, if you twist the needle certain angles, just go through just hit the right position sometimes, shall we say, and you get very little of that cracking noise, which is the breaking threads. Can't always get it. Sometimes it's quite hard to find just the right position for the needle. There we go. Sort of, somewhere around this sort of angle here for this particular bit of the no. And I'm guessing it really depends just exactly how you've hit the material as well. There we go. As soon as I say there we go, it goes back to being noisy. I guess if I want it to be extra careful and slow right down, I could do it a lot better, but yeah, and I think it's a multi-layered cloth as well. I think there's about three. I think it's kind of woven sort of that way, and that way, and possibly again. I don't know how many layers are actually in there. Can't really tell, but it sort of looks like it's woven in a multiple cross. Oh, that did sound purple, yeah. Depends what you mean by plush, the legend said. The tightness means that there's more of these loops per square inch, which means that the surface feels harder, if you like. There's less give in the surface because there's nowhere for the threads to go. If you space them out a lot more, then, and I don't have any around here, but there is then more room for the threads to move independent of each other, and there's a couple of spaces here where it's, because they're longer, it's a bit like that, but they can move more independent of each other, and because of that they feel softer, even though it's all the same sort of thread. So I'm not quite sure. Quite often what people mean by plush is soft. So the less threads per inch, the softer it is, but it doesn't necessarily look as good. So generally speaking, this kind of feels like a carpet. Yeah, firmness. Yes, that's right. Yeah, the firmness. Yeah, I mean, I've got a spot here, for example, where I obviously haven't got quite as many threads per inch, and I can squash it a little bit, and it feels more squashy and softer than a place around here where I've got a higher thread count. But generally speaking, people like to touch it once, but then that's about it. They don't go around feeling it on the wall or anything like that very often. Oops. Be careful the needle doesn't pop out. Mainly because I can end up pulling threads out if I do, and don't really want to do that. Nearly. Doing this doesn't require a particularly high level of skill, to be honest. It's pushing a needle through material. But the hardest thing about that really is keeping your fingers out of the way from underneath, because I'm supporting the material. Because the tighter the material is, the easier it is to do this. It's It's more of a time-consuming task than a skill-based task, but it's fun to do all the same. And sometimes, for some reason or not, the needle will just catch something and it just won't go through, which is an odd thing. The needle isn't fantastically sharp either, although I wouldn't like to jab myself with it because I suspect I possibly could puncture my skin with it. It's not. Whilst it might look like a hypodermic needle, it's not actually that sharp as one. But it's still got a fairly dangerous point on it. And since you quite often are pushing this through relatively quickly, if I got my finger underneath, it would hurt. I don't think I'd draw blood, but it would certainly hurt. And no, I'm not going to try and do that because I already hurts. If there's anybody watching who's expecting the carving, I'm sorry I'm not able to do that this evening. Some surgery that I had yesterday means my stomach muscles hurt, and I need to use them for carving, and I just can't, it's too painful to do it. So we're doing this, which doesn't require me to use stomach muscles. Yeah, it's alright. Evening 3D Block, welcome to the studio this evening. Yeah, that's why I'm doing it, the Legend Sader, is because it takes your mind off things. Both doing something and sort of sharing what I'm doing with you guys and chatting and talking. I am wondering actually if 84 Guy's still around, whether the order is preparing included a punch tool. I think I may have returned the favour. So how have you been today, Free? I know you were around earlier on, but I don't think I asked. Are you intending to stream tonight? Because you weren't sure last night whether you were going to take the night off or not. I'm just thinking what I could actually do with is a small screen just down here to the left with chat on it, because then I'd be able to see it without having to look up every time. Yeah, I haven't yet bought that DLC, but I am thinking about firing Steam up and ordering it. Yeah. Okay. I don't need to watch the clock for you then. Yeah, my credit card's got a bit too much on it this month now, so I'm trying not to order anything new. But since I have to go away shortly for a couple of weeks, then I am hoping my the opportunity to buy much more won't be around for a while. Oh, you got the reference. I wondered. It could be, yes, it could be. I'd have to find a chat client for it though. I've actually got an iPad, so, but it's an iPad 1. So I'm not even, I don't actually think, it might, well, I was about to say, I'm not sure whether the chat actually connects on that. It does sometimes, but not always, on the Twitch app. But it's, yeah. Don't know, just something a bit bigger than a phone type thing, because it's be a bit hard for me to see because I wear glasses. In actual fact, it's probably not a good idea altogether. You know, it would have to be just sat to one side, and if I'm carving, for example, that wouldn't be very good. So it's kind of only doing odd things like this where you're looking down because you're pushing a needle through. I kind of get carried away. That's part of the problem. It's not so bad with carving because you sort of sit up and stretch and have to move around and things just to be able to carve. But something like this, of course, you're just in one position. It's fairly easy just to keep going, and even when I'm talking, I can forget to look at the thing. Okay. Well, that's going to prove an interesting exercise, I guess. Never played that game myself. Never particularly. Never been fantastically interested in playing any of that style. Yeah. I don't know, maybe something like the Microsoft HoloLens so that it just hovers in front of my eyes while I'm doing this. That might be an interesting way of doing it. And yeah, I've got a few Arduinos and a couple of Raspberry Pis around here, so I could fairly easily put a small screen on one of those as well and just run that into chat. especially the Raspberry Pi, I guess, because it would run just a native Twitch client, Twitch window in the browser. There we go, I'm out. Now I have to see if I've got any more of this baby blue. I'm already building up a replacement order to Webster's for this stuff already. I mean, what, six bobbins so far on this piece? It's it's a multiplayer as well, isn't it? I think, AD. I'm not fantastically into multiplayer games myself. That doesn't have a number on it. Oh yes, it does, 31. So was this 31? No, that was 29. Okay. No, it's not the same colour. Okay. That might be. That looks like it is. Number 8. Okay. So that's probably not the same colour. That's number 30, that's not the same colour. May have a problem. Nope, that's number 30. Yeah. That's number 8. Yeah, you have a problem. I know those two aren't it. I know both of those aren't. Well, one of those certainly isn't it. And no more in there. Okay, well it's beginning to look like that may be the end of this piece. $29. Oh, that was lucky. I found one. Look at those. Those two are so similar. Yeah, that's number 8. That's number 29. And can you imagine that they don't, or generally didn't number these things? They just gave you a photograph with the numbers next to the photographs. And can you imagine trying to match colours from a photograph when they're like that? That's good size. Well, yeah. Of course, it's harking back to the good old days of computing. I mean, you've got You've got the Raspberry Pi, you've got Apple computers. I had a tangerine computer at one point. I mean, all the fruits were out there in one shape or another. I don't quite understand what it was about fruits that was so popular for computer names, but so luckily we had a spare bobbin of thread. So looks like my credit card will be getting a little bit of usage again this month. I'm sorry to hear you feeling a bit queasy there, Legend. Yeah, I could do that, but it would be a straight edge cloud. And it would be very much of a stylized cloud if you think about it, because it would have to be the typical sort of cloudy edge. And if you did that, I'm kind of looking at it, you know, the typical sort of hard edged cloud that you might cartoon draw. And I'm kind of looking and thinking, because I did think about doing that, just the same as I thought about using maybe some darker sky colour as well, you know, something like this, to do some of the sky. But then I was looking and thinking, if I put a cloud or something up there, or even you know, the darker colour, your eye will actually get drawn to that as a detail item. And of course where you want it is on the locomotive, really. And you know, to do a cloud, if you like, you'd have had this sort of effect really, but obviously a bit more fluffy. It becomes a hard edge, and I just actually didn't feel like a cloud would particularly look very good, and as I say, would add detail in a place where you didn't really want it. Oh, apricots, yeah. God blimey, I'm trying to think. There was I mean, of course it's a foam, but there's a blackberry, apricot, tangerine. I can't remember half of them, but of course back then they were all very popular, of course, especially the ones that you built yourself. A tangerine was the my second ever computer. The first one was a Commodore PET, but the tangerine I built myself. I was even doing things like low-level disk operating programming on it. And I was just thinking about the computer games these days, that, you know, they're talking about, you know, 3/4 of a gig, 1 or 2 gigs of download and things like that. My first computer game for the tangerine was Asteroids, and it fit, the whole thing fit in 1/4 of a kilobyte of memory. That's 256 bytes of memory. Interesting one. Yeah, sort of like a mottled thread, long. Yeah, it could be quite an interesting one. They don't, but if you're using cotton, for example, as Eddie Fall Guy was looking at, there's a tool here. There's a red tool, which works with essentially. Well, this is the thread here is more like cotton. In that it's quite a slick slick thread. Still 2-ply, but it's quite a slick thread. Whereas this, as you can see, is a lot more don't know if you can see it through the... I'll get one out. Get the blue out here. This is quite a sort of a slick, shiny thread, whereas this, of course, is a lot more fluffy. Hopefully you can see. That should be enough to see anyway, without refocusing everything. Now I know that sort of thing, so this is fairly close to sort of sewing thread or sewing cotton. It's probably a bit thinner, but along those sorts of lines. And I know you can get that sort of variegated colour, so you know, it's over its length it varies in colour between two different shades or two different colours altogether. And so doing something like that might well be very good for things like grass edges and things. The sort of stuff though that, or the sorts of kits that the manufacturer, Webster's, sell for this art form, though, most of the kits and the designs that they do are cartoon stylized. I mean, to some extent this is as well, but it's that sort of style if you ever take a look at the kits. And so yeah, having a cloud, you know, hard edge cloud would sort of suit the stylized image, so they've kind of no reason to do it. I guess I don't know whether there's a lot of people make up their own images or whether they, you know, people just do kits, but I guess nobody's really asked them for that sort of thread. Last I remember, I'll just cut that thread off of there, because it usually gets in my way when I come back to that side. They call the tool a punch tool. There are a few different manufacturers make them. I have seen them. This one is made by a company in the UK called Webster's Craft, or Webster Craft. And let's see if I've got a URL for them. I know they're fairly easy to find, but let's have a look at the material. I don't know, to be honest. I've only ever got it from them directly. As I say, I've tried getting something similar. They call it a twill, which is probably the style of weaving. But okay, that's a fairly obvious one, I guess, as a URL. There you go, you beat me to it. Thanks very much, Adi, for that. I know you were just looking this earlier on, weren't you? So I literally don't know what it is about this material. In fact, I'll I've got the. Yeah, obviously they must buy it in ginormous quantities because when I buy it, it's a 1 meter by, I think it's about a meter width, so it's a meter width, and I've forgotten how long it is, but it's available in different lengths. But it's just labelled like that, so obviously they've bought it in great big rolls. As I've mentioned, I have tried using something that looked the same from a fabric shop, but was a complete disaster. It fell apart. As soon as I put the needle through it a few times, it just developed great big holes. Which kind of dissuaded me from getting any trying again, basically, because it's well, I don't know whether it's expensive or not to buy from Webster's, because I've never tried buying it anywhere else. I do know you need the right material. The cottons or threads you could probably use from a lot of different places, but the material that you're pushing through, that's the magic ingredient. Okay, there you go then. I've not tried that. I'm guessing the way that Webster's would suggest is punch it through this material, put fabric glue on the back, and then cut it out and stick it on. But actually they do say something about it somewhere. Yeah. I think they actually mentioned, now that you've said it, Adi, I think they mentioned about doing that somewhere as well. I think the red tool's better for that then, because you use the shiny cotton, which doesn't won't catch on things as easy as this would. Yeah. But as you say, if you're doing a shirt or something, then that's a good idea. I've never done it into clothing. Adi there is a retired expert in Punchcraft. Actually, Eddie, you never. Oh, okay. I guess with denim, with it being stronger thread, the denim's actually made out of stronger thread. The needle was able to push the threads to one side rather than breaking through them, because it wouldn't be as close a weave as this is, I think. But I completely forgot to ask. But what sort of things were you images were you creating when you were doing it, Eddie Fall Guy? I've got images of flaming skulls and things like that done with Punchcraft. Yeah, on the back of a jacket or something. I'm actually now kind of worried that I'm not going to have enough thread to finish this, which means I could put a cloud in, but I don't really like the idea. As I say, I think it would probably take your eye away from the main detail. Oh well, if I run out, I run out. I'll just have to order some more. Well, I've got to order some more anyway, but oh, okay, yeah, yeah, you did. You know, I was saying this afternoon to yeah. Well, I was saying this afternoon about how bad my memory is. It's like a sieve; things just go out. When somebody reminds me, I can remember doing it, but I can't otherwise, bring it to mind. Earlier on the stream, I was trying to remember the name of the that company that does Sonos, the music players, and just now I was just trying to remember who it was. I was saying that I couldn't remember anything till on your stream, and it's gone. I have a terrible memory. As I say, I can remember when people remind me. I go, oh yeah, I remember now. But without that prompt, I have a horrible memory. Okay. Kingfisher's a nice one because of all the bright colours that you can get in with the for the iridescent plumage. the legend Sada's gone quiet. I think he's busy now looking through that Webster's site. It's a bit like it's a bit like going into a candy shop. I did the same thing with was it the Lord of the Rings site that you mentioned, Adi? And there's just it's a sweet shop. There's just so much to look at and so interesting. Okay, I'd be interested to know, because when you read their descriptions, it's really hard to understand. I mean, they kind of say the blue one is for this and the red one's for the shiny fabric, and the green one is kind of for things like cross stitch and slightly thicker threads. The yellow one I couldn't follow at all as to quite what it does. And the black one obviously is the one for wool, for doing the rugs. But I never actually thought of asking him something as obvious as that. No, something's wrong there. I'm just pulling threads. Yeah, it looks like just a twist or something, or a bit of fluff was caught in the side of the needle and it wasn't pulling through, so all I was doing was punching through and gradually pulling threads out that I'd already put in as I moved further away. So we'll just get rid of that off the end. I'm trying to think if I've got a green tool somewhere. If I have, that means I've got another bag of Punchcraft stuff somewhere. One of the really interesting things is, as I say, hopefully I'm going to have a bigger studio later this year, and when I do, I'm going to be clearing out this one. It's going to be interesting to see just what I find. I'm going to come across all sorts of tools and craft items that I've completely forgotten about because they were hidden behind something else. And hopefully I'm going to find all those tools and things that you've got, but you just don't know where they are. No, I wouldn't put it past me. I'll have been placing an order at one point and thought, you know what, that looks interesting, and I'll tag one onto the order whilst, because the postage and packaging, it doesn't add much, type of thing, and fully intending to use it for something. I mean, I think if the green one is the one I think it is, and it is used for things like you can use cross stitch threads, because I've got a load of those around, and some crochet threads as well somewhere. I'd have thought, hey, I can use those up and have the tool, but it'll have got put somewhere. That's why I do try and keep all the same craft stuff together. All this stuff where I keep looking for colours and things, it's all in one box, and I do make a concerted effort to try and keep everything together for that very reason. Otherwise you end up going, I know I've got one somewhere, and you can spend weeks looking. Mind you, what you usually find I usually find then is I'll spend weeks looking for something and won't be able to find it at all, and I'll just look up one day and it'll be on a shelf next to me, and I'll go and they come with different tools with different millimeter sizes. Not quite well, I mean the different, I'm not quite sure what you're looking at there, the Legend, but the different, let me just pull this one out, see if I can, because I'm not sure what you mean by the millimeter sizes, because the kit wise I thought they just referred to the sizes of the pictures, but when you get that needle's threaded. If I show you these two needles here, don't know if you can see it. Let's see if I can zoom this camera in. That's a digital zoom, but anyway. Now let's see if I can force the focus for the moment to be on the needles. Come on, thank you. I said the needles. There we go. I don't know if you can see the blue. Come on, refocus. Take my thumb out of it. Okay. If this thing will actually focus, come on, come on, come on, come on. You might have seen the odd moment of clarity there. Alright, I'll try and do this by hand. There you go. The blue needle here is thicker than the red needle. So they deal with it, yeah. Okay, so you know the thicker the needle, the thicker the thread it will deal with. I'm not actually altogether sure as well whether putting a thin thread through a thick needle is a good idea. Mainly because you create a hole which takes a little time to shrink, if you like, with the material, so when you pull the needle out. So I'm kind of thinking that if you try to put too thin a thread through with a thicker needle, what you get is a loop would probably pull out. So that's why you kind of need to use a thinner needles for the thinner threads. Now I'm guessing sort of the yellow and the green tools. Well, the green one I think is for thicker thread than the blue. I'm not quite sure, but that I think is what the difference between the tools are. I think probably most of their pictures seem to be done with the blue tool and this fluffy thread. So if you're interested in doing the kits or fairly large pictures, this red one they kind of get used. I've seen this one and used it myself on sort of small items. That I now need to refocus this, don't I? Let's throw that on there, let that focus, and then turn it off. Let's zoom back out again. There we go. The red tool, because of the thinner thread, you've got a lot more. You've got to get a lot more punches per inch. So you know, when you're doing something about this sort of diameter, it's as much work as something like the big one that I'm doing here behind. So sort of coat badge size, I guess. Anything much more than that, and I can imagine it being very labour intensive to do something like this with a red needle. I think would probably take months. Might be fun, but it'd probably take months. If you do get something from them, even if it comes with a threader, I'd suggest getting yourself a spare pack. Just because, well, just because, more than anything. You get 2 threaders in a pack. I think generally they give you one with the kits with the tools. But I've lost one. Well, I lost one the other day on the stream. I couldn't find it, and you can't. It's not a normal needle threader just because of the length of it. So it's probably a wise idea to have a spare. Let me have a drink. It's getting a bit warm here. Oh, they use a toothbrush. I've just seen, just looking at the websites on my other screen, and I recall that there's a pussycat, which I know is done with this thread, but what they do is they brush it afterwards and if you like, tease all the threads out, so it actually looks like more like long fur. And I always thought they used a wire brush. Actually, it looks like they use a toothbrush, which of course makes a heck of a lot more sense than a wire brush. That would rip this stuff to pieces. One thing I find annoying about their site is you see some of the categories on the left hand side, I think, and I'll bet this is it. If you look at like the low Vix acrylic mixed yarns, oh, they do actually have them. At one time they tend to just have the categories sometimes and not the actual threads, and it's kind of annoying because I kind of would like to buy some of their threads sometimes. I actually don't experiment a great deal with things like different threads, just mainly because I know theirs work, and it's kind of like I could go out and buy some threads and experiment, or I could use these that I know work, and I'm kind of a bit lazy in that respect. Unless they're something's real super expensive and there appears to be cheaper alternatives around, then I tend to stick to the manufacturer or something like that, just because I know it all works together. Oh, okay. At one time they just give you one, long time ago, or when I recall buying them. I've got a few now because partly because I kept losing them and then finding them later, and I think you got one, at least one with every tool. It's starting to sound like there may be 3 or 4 Punchcrafters on Twitch streaming before too long. Yeah. Not that I visit craft fairs, either visiting them or as an exhibitor at them. But I was just thinking, I could do a shop signing Punchcraft, but then I thought, but then there's pyrography, and I'm not quite sure what I could do. Okay. You're not shy of the comments, are you, Eddie Fall Guy? Or are you just taking the opportunity to streamline your main craft? So stream your main craft more than anything else. Ah, cool. Legend. There's not a lot you can get wrong with a tool, really. It's either a bent needle and that's about it. Oh, I don't mind you streaming. I'm don't worry about that. You go ahead if you get one and want to do it, the legend. You go ahead. I'd love to see more people doing anything on stream, and if it's the same as I'm doing, well, so be it. I don't mind. I can sit in your stream and I told him about this, Yeah. Or in my case, the wife's things. That's what I got the red tool for. She used to collect little porcelain dragons called what's it now? Pocket dragons. And so I made a few little sort of button-sized, badge-sized images, circular images of pocket dragons, so that she could put them on things. Although I've not used the red tool quite as much as I've used this blue one. You've seen the pyrography of Junior and Felix. Well, I've got some Punchcraft images of our first 3 cats, which are actually hung up on the wall. So they were I think they were the second thing I did in Punchcraft. The first one was one of the kits. There's a big white cat kit, which I did first, basically to learn how to do it, and then I did 3 cats, fully sculptured, which was quite nice, and then I can't remember what I've done after that. Pocket dragon. It would be green if it was, and and it would look sort of like a cartoon dragon, and it would have been made by a guy called Real Musgrave. Okay. Hey, that's good. Fortunately, he doesn't make them anymore now, so... Yeah, well, I don't have much time outside of Twitch these days. I kind of go to work, come home from work, have tea. It's time to stream. It's 10 o'clock. Time to watch a couple of other guys or girls streaming before I go to bed and start again. Myth and magic ones. I don't know. I don't really collect or particularly fancy much of those things. Myself. I might occasionally get a single piece of something if I just like it, but. I'm not actually a collector of things. I suppose at one time I might have, you might have said I collected books, because I never, once I bought a book, I very rarely gave it or threw it away. So, and some of the authors that I used to read, if a new book came out, I'd just go pick it up off the shelf for them. I wouldn't even bother reading the synopsis because I knew I'd like the book. So from that point of view, it's just that's new, I'm having that, and from there. But I don't particularly have a collecting personality. He says, thinking, I've got bags and bags of electronic stuff that I've bought to do things with and not yet actually done anything with. But, not, well, I was about to say it's not quite the same thing. It probably is. I think my wife's got the complete collection, actually, of Pocket Dragons. Actually, that was the reason why I ended up trying some of the material. We went to, my wife wanted to go to a Collectible World Studios, who made the Pocket Dragons, and they were holding an event which Real Musgrave was going to be there, and my wife actually wanted me to make something about this size of a Pocket Dragon, just either to have him sign it or something, I can't recall which now. And we'd gone away therefore for a long weekend and gone early to give me time to do it, and I'd forgotten to take the material, and so we were looking in shops to try and get something similar, but didn't succeed. So yeah, that's right, I do. I collect stuff to make stuff. The only problem is I do things like collect wooden objects, for example. Like I've got a rolling pin down here to one side of me, and I've got some leaf-shaped wood shapes. And a couple of other things, a chopping board or something like that around to do pyrography on, for example, and they're there, but the problem is I keep going, well, it's a special shape, I've got to find the right thing to go on it, and I've been looking for the right thing for several years in some cases, and I just don't like the idea of doing something on it and thinking that was the wrong image, it doesn't look very good, and I've just wasted the wood. But of course it's been sat there for years now, so it kind of wouldn't really matter. But it's just my personality. I hate wasting stuff like that, because it's pretty pricey to buy. If you think, it might not sound much, but a shaped leaf are sort of about a quarter the size of this, maybe about £4 or £5, £4 or £5, about $6 to $10, and I kind of want to do something worthy of that sort of spend. Weird, really. I should just get on with it and use them and do something and learn something from it, but Twitch is kind of forcing that on me as well anyway, because to keep up with streaming. I mean, it doesn't sound much when, yeah, this takes 5 or 6 streams to do this. The carving, you know, will take several weeks. But you don't have to go through a heck of a lot of material, relatively speaking. That when you're streaming, both in sort of physical materials like threads and things, but also in subjects that you actually want to do on these things. It's sort of kind of weird because I don't have a great imagination for creating pictures. There's lots of things I'd love to be able to do, you know, like an eagle, for example, or you know, I don't know, a Scania truck, just to pick up the truck simulator theory gaming thing, and or a landscape, or I don't know, a Spitfire. And yet trying to actually think of what image I'd like to do of them, I just can't imagine it. It's a bit weird for an artist, really. Anyway, good evening to anybody new that's watching the studio this evening. Welcome. Feel free to drop into chat if you want to do so, but if you want to lurk, that's okay. If you're wondering what this is, or even indeed having read the title wonder what Punchcraft is, that's what you see me doing here. It's using this particular tool to punch and a hole in this material and push a thread through at the same time, creating a loop on the other side of the fabric. So what I'm doing here is working on the back. You're looking at the back of the image. The front of the image is more three-dimensional, or it's a 2.5 dimensional object, really. It's slightly sculptured on the other side, and looks somewhat like a rug or a carpet when it's complete. So just to give you an idea, if you've not seen the front, because I've not turned it over for a while, that's the front of the image, and as you can see, it stands proud of, well, if you couldn't see, a bit difficult to see on camera, but if you can see, it stands proud. The loops are about, what, 2 or 3 millimeters, couple of millimeters proud of the material, and I can control the depth of these or the length of these loops. So in some areas, like here for example, I've used a very shallow depth, and in some of these areas, like the brown and the grey here, I've used a longer depth than the background. So they stand proud, or they sink into the background and create a textured or a sculptured look. And of course on the edges I've also created a rounded effect as well, so it creates a nice clean smooth edge. So you can get quite a range of textures in a piece. Unfortunately though, you are limited to the amount of detail that you can get into a piece, because whilst I'm probably pushing, oh, I don't know, easily something like 20 loops per inch, just single loops hardly show up any detail at all. So for example, there's just 2 loops here of white, and you can see them just about as a dot there. The window here is outlined in 1 loop of black, really quite difficult to see, and the lettering here on the side, that's just 1 loop thick all the way through. So that sort of level of detail is quite difficult to achieve. So you either have to make it bigger, or you add some detail by using colour. For example, this panel here is actually a grill on the real locomotive, which presumably is the intake to the diesel engines. But because it's sort of slightly black behind, I've done it a darker colour, so you get the idea of something being there. But there's no way I could get the grille details in, for example. Excuse me a moment. Just my beautiful wife checking in on me. You're about to try and break out the graphics tablet. Yeah, I have one of those there, and I've got another. I've got a touch sensitive. Well, it's a Cintiq to the side of me here, which I use for art stuff. But I can, I can, given an image, like if I take a photograph of something, I can then use that as the basis on which to base an image. Even drawing it from scratch, I can do that. But I have to have the prompt to be creative in that way. And to be creative in the kitchen, I'm not too bad at that, as long as I've got the ingredients. I am relatively good at going, what have I got? Okay, I can make something from that. But there again, somebody says, make a roast whatever, and I go, I have no idea how to do that. But certainly, food is important, the legend said, so go ahead and... Okay. One of your smaller catches. So it's only going to be about 3 foot long then, I assume. That sounds like setting somebody up for underestimation. I think the biggest fish I've probably caught is probably something like a 6 pound cod. Nothing particularly ginormous. I have the patience for fishing, but I just haven't done it for an awfully long time. And I suspect it's not going to be something I'll take up again. Yeah, that's fine, that's not a problem. You can go ahead and post that link. Okay, let's take a look at that. Okay. Yep, that's a small one. So, what is that? What is that fish? The legend said. I don't have fish recognition skills these days. I'm assuming it's a carp of some kind, but that's a nice one. Closest to that I've caught is a cod, which is a bit easier to catch, to say the least. Largemouth bass. Okay. I can see where the largemouth bit comes in. I'm making an assumption that you return those to the lake when they've been caught. Rather than stuffing it and mounting it as a trophy. And I can imagine that was quite exciting once you hook that. I'm guessing that you do what a lot of carp fishermen do, which would be using quite lightweight line and tackle. So there's no way you'd have been able to force the fish in any shape or form. You actually had to play it until it tired out. Wow, that's I mean, £11 is a sizable fish, but £22. Whew. Tillybug, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Nice to see you again. The current subject is coarse fishing. A £6 rod and £10 test. Yeah, you had some fun, didn't you? You had some fun landing that bass then. Whilst I have done some coarse fishing, I've not done much ledger work. I generally did float fishing, but I've done more saltwater sea fishing, and of course most of the time you're either spinning or using some sort of either ledger rig or just a pure weight lures, and to some extent it doesn't matter what line you're using anyway. And of course boat, because most of it was on the boat rods are heavy duty things anyway, so it's still quite still surprising though, just quite how much force a fish can put into something, even when you're not at risk at busting the tackle. I only had a small boat, but there's many a time something like even a sort of 3 or 4 pound cod is towing the boat. Yeah, 25 feet, 50 yards, blimey. Yeah, and if anybody is watching or listening or reading chat and thinking 5 minutes to land a fish like that, it's not very long. I'll almost guarantee it's about the longest that Legend. It feels like a lifetime when you landing a fish like that, or landing any fish. Actually, 5 minutes, if something can pull 50 yards with a 25 pound drag, that 5 minutes will have been an awfully long time. You've certainly got to have trust in that you've set the drag right anyway. So it's just a little bit too much, and a quick tug from the fish and line snap, and Yep, hopefully always an interesting discussion going on, Tilly. You carry on, legend of Cedar. I don't mind you talking fish at all. So I've got a little bit of experience, but nothing really fantastic. I've done it, but it's a good many years ago, and I enjoyed it, but it's not something I'm going to take back up again. But by all means, you carry on. I love hearing about people do things like this. You don't really use it. Well, I'm gonna say the legend can probably say more, but yeah, that's what I was about to say. The rod does all the work, and with the big sea fish, you kind of just hang on to the rod and lean backwards, and it's the tension on the rod. Certainly with the big sea fish, it's the tension on the rod that. As well as the break on the line and things, but it's that which does the work for you, not not just upper body strength. You don't really need a lot of strength in your arms, for example, because they're you're tending to hold them straight out basically. So when you're reeling a fish in, you lean forward and you reel it in by taking up the line that you get by leaning forward, type of thing, and then you lean backwards and let the rod do the take the strain. The most tiring fish, oh yeah, true. Not only that, the rod's strapped to the boat as well. But yeah, I've never gone that big. 5 or 6 pounds in Scottish waters is kind of a cod or a pollock, something like that. But the odd flatfish. Big sailfish, and if you're not strapped in, you're going water skiing. Yep, and then there's the knife sat just to one side, just in case, so that you can get rid of the line if need be. Yeah, you do. I was about to say that the most tiring bit about sea fishing is when you've got something like about 1,000 yards of line out there, or something equally ridiculous because it's that deep and that far back, and then you have to wind it in, because the gearing on the reels, they're quite low geared, so you've got maybe 15-20 turns of the handle to get one turn on the reel, and you imagine one turn on the reel, it's your center of your reels are not that big, about that sort of size, the size of this, and you think one turn of that is a few inches, and you've got 1,000 yards out there. Oh, you've just painted around the outsides of your free, yeah. Yeah. You should have left that free until sort of 4 o'clock in the morning one morning, Then you've got an even better reason for calling it an insomnia picture. It's a good job my wife doesn't paint, otherwise she'd probably have thousands of those canvases. Yeah, for the big game fishing like that, Legend. I've never done any. I've gone as £25 nylon is about as much as I've ever done. But when you even in the locks, Scottish locks, but when you're far out at sea, you've got sort of you can easily be sort of what would it be, 600 feet depth, so there's still a heck of a lot of line there, but it's not quite as bad as the game fishing stuff. But even then, I was just thinking we've had, because I used to go with my father, we've had a couple of reels just implode with the stress from the line. Because it's been wound in under stress, which is something you sort of learnt fairly. You learn it once, shall we say? If you wind the line, the nylon line in under stress, it's stretched, and if you leave it on the reel, it shrinks, and it just imploded the reel itself, the core, which was I don't know, some sort of reinforced plastic, but it just crushed it on a couple of reels, and that's quite an expensive thing because it's basically a brand new reel. But it was, if you've ever pulled a big fish in with nylon, you dunk your line back over the side and then reel it in again, even if it's your last catch of the day. Though I do remember once fishing for mackerel. Now they don't put a lot of stress on the line, but when you got 6 of them on, and kept throwing the line over and kept bringing 6 fish in, after about an hour and 2 cases full of fish, we just gave up. They were virtually jumping into the boat. It's a good job I liked mackerel, and that lot went in the freezer. But with saltwater fish, I caught fish to eat. Quite a few did go back, in, but we did actually catch, generally sort of catch a nice fresh cod or something like that, because we used to go camping and go out during the day fishing. As you get towards the evening, one of the nice fish that came in overboard you just keep for tea. And it's amazing just how much different fresh caught fish tastes to the stuff you buy in shops. Yeah, the braid stuff is expensive stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've caught a couple of flatfish. Nothing like the size of a ray, but yeah, blimey. Yeah, it is. And that it's not well, I was about to say it's not a psychological thing. Certainly it's not a psychological thing. Having caught it or knowing it's fresh, I think it really does make a heck of a difference. And I know with the big cod and pollock, for example, a young one, which is probably anything up to about 5-6 pounds, it tastes completely different to the big sort of 25-30 pound cod that the fishing boats tend to catch, and what you get in your fish and chips and things. Because for a number of years we always went fishing to a particular place where another family went. They had a bigger boat, they'd go out to sea, and they'd generally bring a big cod in each day. And the difference between what the big fish taste like and the younger ones, it's a bit like a completely different fish. Now, of course, commercial fishing, you don't want them catching the little stuff because they've got to grow up to be the big stuff, but it is a completely different taste. Used to cook them, wrap them in foil with butter on a barbecue. Leave them sort of to cook like that, sort of semi-steamed, semi-roasted. And when you open the foil on a plate, and the fish itself just literally fell off the bone. Beautiful. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the bigger the fish. Yeah, they're sort of, yeah. I can't actually describe the difference in taste really. I mean, as you say, the older fish is sort of somehow tougher, and younger fish is kind of sweet, and I don't mean sugar sweet, but really difficult thing to describe. Oh, you're quite alright, Tillybug. Also tempting the legend Sadar there, who wasn't hungry earlier, but is gradually developing an appetite with all this talk of delicious fish and things. See, not only do we feed you art and crafts, we also encourage you to actual physical food as well. Now, I thought I was going to finish the blue on this stream, but I don't think that's going to happen myself. And since 3D Bloke isn't going to be streaming this evening, then I'm going to carry on for a little bit longer, since it's completely taking my mind off my stomach muscles. I'm sort of sat quite comfortably at the moment, and I'm enjoying what's going on. Having you guys around is amazing. Thanks very much for joining, by the way, this evening, everybody. I don't like. Well, I was going to say I don't like coffee in an evening. It doesn't like me in an evening. There's something about it. Coffee always tastes somewhat like dishwater to me after about 6 o'clock at night. I don't know what it is. That's the coffee I make, not necessarily going out and buying a latte or something like that. But coffee that I love during the day, when it comes to 6 o'clock at night, I just can't drink it anymore, and I have to switch to tea, or occasionally something a little bit more alcoholic. But free. You gotta stop sticking your finger in the paint pot to stir it, you know. Tell you what I've started doing actually is I've got some latex gloves. If I'm you know, expecting, if you like, to have paint all over the place, I start putting latex gloves on these days. I kind of don't like having dirty hands. not particularly obsessed about it. You know, if I get paint on my hands, I'll go wash it off. I don't. I just don't like having it around the place. Comes in useful for glass engraving as well, because you don't want glass dust all over your fingers either. Mainly because you don't want to end up rubbing your eyes or something and getting in them. Yeah, I get the already talked ones, and I know what you mean though. They do get kind of warm in the gloves, but there's always a trade-off. But I don't always wear them, but sometimes. Just trying to think actually why I originally bought them. Must have been doing something that I thought it would protect my hands from. I know I got them for painting, but they now get used for all sorts of things, like changing tyres on cars or anything like that as well. Hey Eddie, do you find with the aluminium rings that you start smelling the aluminium on your fingers, the metal on your fingers, or are they fairly good like that? Because I know when I end up handling a lot of metal parts for things, I end up with that sort of metallic sort of smell all over the place. Oh well, that's a good enough reason not to. I think there are supposed to be some that in quotes breathe, but I've never not come across any. Yeah, and the aluminium naturally has a corrosion layer on it anyway, I guess. So. No, I just wondered. It's I don't use solvent-based paints at all for doing it in the house. It's not particularly pleasant to use solvents. About the only solvent-based stuff that gets used is clear coat. The only time I've ever really used it, I've used it out of cans, which of course is a bit of a silly thing. I really should get some single part water-based clear coat, but then I can spray it from a gun rather than cans, because cans are terrifically expensive, and the clear coat that they put on stuff is really rather thin. I'd love to use 2-part solvent based, but that's usually an arsenic based catalyzer, which isn't really necessarily the best thing to have around, especially in a household environment. Problem with doing it outside is, well, primer's not so bad, but if you start trying to do clear coat outside, slightest wind or anything like that, and you're getting any dust blowing about, it really messes up a clear coat. From the point of view of you having to sand it, sand all the dust back out of it, and then do it again, and then you keep having to do that if you're doing it outside. And of course you need decent weather, and you can't move it until it's at least flashed off, and then you've still got to move it extremely carefully, otherwise you drop it and then it's a real pain in the neck. If you're going to do it inside, put up a plastic tent and go inside the tent, and your neighbours will probably thank you if you use a carbon filter as well on the extractor. And I know you're already investigating the air mask, so and don't tell the health and safety people. Yeah. Well, you don't even need a stray fly, just dust. Specks of dust settling on the thing. May not be as bad with a canvas, I guess, but if you're doing metal, then it stands out like mad because you've got no underlying texture. and you know, metal you usually want shiny clear coat rather than a matte clear coat. Something around here just beeped, but don't know what it was. Right, let's have a look at how we're doing on this. Yeah, that's a good idea, Free. Get a professional to do it. They've got the booths to do it in, and they can use the two-part stuff, which is a heck of a lot better. It's a lot thicker as well. It polishes up a lot better. You just need to persuade them to do it and not charge you a commercial rate. That's not looking too bad. I'll go on for about another quarter of an hour, I think. We'll see how far we get. After all, I still may need something to do on tomorrow night's stream if my stomach doesn't improve. And my wife is who's had some surgery like this before, is highly suggestive of the fact it's going to be 4 or 5 days before my stomach muscles are okay. You could always start doing computer cases as well, Free. I mean, that's quite... I was going to say, in theory it's quite lucrative, but it's a smaller market. Of course, that's why I got into airbrushing. It's because I wanted to paint my own case. And given that I've got a water-cooled PC, it's a nice sea blue with tropical fish. Yeah, it certainly would be easy doing just the side panels. To be honest, I did the full case, top. You know, well, it was a. I don't know who the case is, but it was a one-piece, top, back, front, and base, and then 2 side panels. But I also did the DVD drivers, actually a Blu-ray drive as well. Stripped the front cover off that, and that was the hardest part about painting the thing. I was trying to get paint, even with plastic primer and adhesion promoter, to get paint to actually go on there was amazingly difficult. Scuffed up on the lot, and it still took a fair bit of doing, and then I had to do it twice because the clear coat went on and then fell off basically, so I had to do it all again. Yeah, games consoles. And the hardest part, AD, is stripping the thing apart to do it. It's kind of a pain in the neck. If somebody strips it apart, it's not a bad job, but and then you've got to clear coat it, but because that with the controllers, with them getting hands on so much, you need a fairly decent thick clear coat on. But hydro dipping stuff is produces some really interesting patterns. Mind you, that's all solvent based enamel type paints, isn't it? I think for hydro dipping, if I remember my techniques correctly. Never done any. And I've never done one of my games consoles because I kind of chicken out really. Not so bad with a controller, but a games console, because I know what's going to happen. The day I paint it, it'll go faulty, and I'll have to send, and I can't send it back under warranty. Okay. Oh well, yeah. If you got if you got the car spray shop, because car clear coats, with them being a 2-part epoxy based thing, they get a nice thick coat, which means they polish up really well, and they're hard wearing. Everybody. I must be the only person that doesn't know somebody with a spray shop. I'd have to do it on my own, or find somewhere that would do it for me while they were doing something else without setting up just for me, because that's expensive. I thought I'd have to be asking him to do about 50 things at the same time. I was just thinking there, pictures of out going into a local car spray shop and saying, "Would you like to be my friend?" That's one way around it, free, isn't it? I mean, that's that way. Then you're not even it's not even your responsibility to taking the original apart or anything. Kind of like the helicopter cockpits you know, the nose cones. I've got one set around spare for the T-Rex that I keep meaning I'll do, but I've never done so. Yeah, but AD, I mean, they were meant to be used though, weren't they? So yeah, a bit of dust wouldn't have bothered you quite so much as if they were on display and you were looking at them every day. Well, there you go. Maybe I shall have to try it one of these days. I can hear a computer pinging somewhere around here and I don't know where it is. It's not my laptop. Oh, it come with my work laptop because that's turned on, I suspect. Okay. Yeah, you know, it's one of those things that I knew but never did and completely forgotten about until you reminded me. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's so obvious. And yet, you know, as you say, on texture, well, almost on any paper, but texture paper especially. And yeah, trying to get your, I saw you last night trying to get the masking tape off without tearing it. The only way I've ever found of getting close to doing that is to keep the tape, as you pull the tape back. So if your tape's along here, make sure you're keeping the tape pressed to the board. So you've got it's folded right back on itself. And then pull it away at 90 degrees to the tape, because that way if it does tear, it tears towards the edge of the paper instead of tearing along it. So you actually, you know, that as you pull the surface off, you only pull a small amount off as it hits the edge, usually anyway. Having said which, the next time I do it, it's going to go all the way across. I know it is, but I always enjoy that bit though, taking the tape off, especially if you've been painting right up to the edges as you do and I do as well, because you suddenly get that frame effect around it, and it completely often changes the look of the piece just to have a frame on it. And then occasionally, depending on what it is, if I've done a flower or something like that, or there's a bit of grass on the side, I will afterwards literally go and just put a little bit of the leaf over the side or something like that, which just to tweak everybody's sort of 3D impression of the thing. Depends on how good you've actually stuck the masking tape down as well, Free, because I don't know about you, but I have a tendency to take the back of the scalpel and run it along just along the edge, not the whole of the tape, because I don't really want the tape to stick, but just that edge where it meets the paper. I tend to run the back of the scalpel because it's got a smooth it's got a smooth rounded edge, so I just run it along the just the edge and press it down, and that helps a heck of a lot, because you've got better contact then. The glue on the back gets into, well, I use watercolour paper rather than canvas paper, and it just gets down into a little bit more into the fibres, and it seems to do a reasonable job of sealing it. But I don't generally you know, try and push down the rest of the tape, because I don't really want that to stick at all. Yeah, so you don't pull the paper off. Yeah. It always feels like I burn my thumbnail if I do that, though. Kind of hurts. So the scalpel doesn't mind. I know you've got an X-Acto knife, so it's not quite the same thing, unless it's got that ball end on the end of it, but ow! I say ow because I just missed myself. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these off, and I'm going to cut these off because my stomach is getting a bit tired. I need to just sit back and have a rest. But there we go. We've got about 2/3 of the sky done. Because it's, you know, in actual sort of punched area, I've probably done about 2/3 of the sky. And I'm hoping there's going to be just enough thread left to finish it. No, actually, I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of thread left to finish it, but I suspect there's going to be just enough. And that, though, will be on another stream, I think, because I'm going to have a rest now. I'm going to go see who else is about. I think actually there'll be a guy streaming Train Simulator tonight, so I shall go have a watch of him if you're not streaming free. Actually, I'd have gone and watched him even if you were streaming, because I do that anyway. I've usually got 2 or 3 streams on after I finish. You're one of them. CJ if he's on. Chris if he's on, and the Train Simulator guy, Matt Pendleton. So whilst I am saying I'm stopping, what I'm going to do is just say, you know, thank you to everybody that's been watching and is watching me, and you know, just point out that in stream we have at least 2 or 3 very excellent streamers themselves who have been chatting for most of the evening. You got 3D Blog there who does okay, that probably explains some things if Waffle's in again tonight. Yeah, we've got 3D there, who, as you've possibly gathered, is an airbrush artist. Does some really excellent work and some wonderful monochrome. Although at the moment he's in his artistic phase, shall we say, doing some nice, more abstract things. I'm just laughing at AD's comment that's just come through, which you'll hear about in a minute when you actually hear the sound from me. Yeah, Yep, and also we've got Eddie Fall Guy, who is reminding me there to actually stop the stream rather than just showing you the end credits for the last 2 hours of my last stream. Dear. Well, at least it'll push the time broadcast stats up on Twitch. And 84 guy there who creates some very nice jewellery using chainmail techniques and chainmail rings. Some very beautiful stuff. I can say that from experience, having bought some of it. Very interesting to watch. He normally broadcasts that on a Wednesday evening though, and occasionally during the day, I believe, Eddie. Otherwise he also broadcasts some games as well, like Euro Truck Simulator. A very interesting game to play. So if anybody who is watching who isn't following, I would encourage you, of course, to push the follow button. And of course, in theory, Twitch will then tell you when I go live. Yeah, I did say in theory anyway. If you don't believe Twitch will do that, you can follow me on Twitter at Zaragonart, or it's below the stream window. The details are down there. Actually, I must get details of Punchcraft on there as well. I shall maybe do that later on. But otherwise, if you just wish to lurk or drop in the next time, you should see me on tomorrow evening from about 8 PM UK time, 1900 GMT, or approximately 2.5 hours earlier than whatever it is wherever you are now. So a simple bit of maths will tell you that when I go live. I may well be on tomorrow afternoon doing a special stream, depending on whether my wife goes out or not. And if you're around AD and want to watch and offer advice, that would be appreciated. And there you go, AD's also given times when he's streaming, so thank you very much, AD, for doing that. And I love to watch, so generally speaking, if AD's on, I do try and watch him. It's an amazing art form. I'm about to find out how on earth he remembers where all the rings go, but we shall see about that tomorrow. Sorry, I'm just noticed there's a cat hair in here, and I'm just trying to get the cat hair out. So, yeah, I don't think anybody noticed, Eddie. I didn't notice until I'd came to try and push the start streaming button, and it said stop streaming, and I thought, what? So to stop it, to start it again. But anyway, thank you everybody. It has been enormous fun. You've kept my mind off the surgery I had and the tummy that's complaining, and thank you all for that. It's been wonderful having you around. See you on the next stream.